superintendent contract. Any discussion on that?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? That is carried. Next, we have the capital outlay project bid award. We received one bid from, of a total of 96,600, just underneath our capital outlay threshold. Any discussion on that? I entertain a motion to award that.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? It is carried. Next, we have the creation of the records retention, disposition management officer stipend position.
I'll move it.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? That is approved. Create homeschool coordinator stipend position.
I'll move it.
Kevin, second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? That is created. Next, we have personnel approvals. And that's the adjustment of salaries for automotive mechanic, bus driver positions to be effective March 5th. And just combining those two and recategorizing that, as well as a custodial worker, bus driver, and automotive mechanic and bus driver positions. Be compensated accordingly for both of those working. Should have been, we probably should have done that a while ago, so.
Agreed.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion on those? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? That is approved. F was removed, no.
For 9G. Just the regular appointments. Yes, it's now F.
Okay. Professional appointments, 9F.
Make motion.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion on those?
No.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So, appointed. And we are finally up to supervisor remarks.
Yeah.
I just say it was nice to see Rick Robinson, even
Yeah.
for a brief moment, digitally. It was nice to see his face.
Yep. I could say something wise right there, but I won't. So it is nice. Rick is doing great, working from where he is. John Nolan's report is on here. And the one thing I'll just mention is DOT inspections continue to be worrisome and in a struggle, but he's doing a nice job, and the mechanics are working extremely hard to get through, and we continue to advocate with DOT regarding the inspection process. But hopefully things will continue to get better there. And hopefully the weather continues to work out well, and we don't have any interesting moments when it comes to transportation. On Rick's report, just to mention, they're always busy. The one thing that is just a note is the ongoing work notice that the Township Cafeteria Presentation Project noted earlier this year, when I was at a presentation there, that we needed to upgrade, and we needed to do, that's an area that they use not only internally, but for communication, for community presentations such as the Veterans Day. Jake was there for that day being recognized, the sound system in there. It was very apparent that we had not given it the attention that was needed. Rick, as he always does, jumped forward with it with Melanie, and with the assistance of Meg, and they are already making upgrades to that space. So putting a fixed system in there rather than a portable system Now you get a system that's proper for that space. So I just wanna just acknowledge that fact. So that's gonna be a nice improvement for that space. We had hoped to do that underneath the project, if you recall, that was one of the items that was not needed. So we removed it from the project and we did it internally. My end, just a couple quick things. What? Here we go. Okay, health insurance, I think we've indicated in the past that we are continually looking, as we do every year, at any adjustments and any things that we need to do working with our health insurance. We are moving forward with adjusting and changing to a self-funded plan. As we get presentation materials and documents, we will provide those to the board as we move forward with our bargaining units. We have meetings already scheduled with our bargaining units to review this concept and process. It's really the back end, how we operate it and how we administer it, not necessarily the front end. The front end, it's a comparable plan. It's not going to change any service. It's just going to change details on the user end. But we have meetings as early as I think this Friday afternoon. And the last item, yesterday, we did conduct, today's Tuesday, yesterday, we did have the facility security site review. We had the CNS individuals, one of them which used to be with Armored One, if you've heard of that name. They were here, as well as Deputy Beers and Deputy Clark in the sheriff's office. And we were here and reviewed our protocols and any details that they needed from the technology end. And then they were throughout the district, and we should have that report in 2 to 3 weeks, they tell me. So at that point in time, we will, again, that'll be a confidential report because it's regarding safety. And critically looking at our operation and our infrastructure. So obviously that would be a confidential report, but we will provide that to the board and have any discussion items there, as well as facilities, as well as safety committee. So we'll see what it brings to us. I'm excited. It was very thorough. I'm excited to see what we get. It's should give us a nice map, not only capital project wise, but internally wise. It could give us a multi-year map is what I'm hoping for the district. So that's it.
I just wanted to highlight Tammy, myself, and Nate did meet with WTA execs prior to this meeting today. I thought it was an excellent meeting, very positive. A couple things we talked about was just maybe some policy stuff we can work in on future things and some communication pieces. Just what we think is transparent and being communicated. Want to make sure that we're really saying that we're communicating, back and forth and having maybe 2 meetings a year with the exec committee potentially going forward. So we'll discuss that. I don't want to rush it now with going into our presentation, but when we have the details and notes for that, we'll file them up in the board docs so everybody can review them and look at them. But again, a very welcome meeting with them, very positive, and everything that both sides are looking at we're on the same page with. So I think it was very, very positive. So thank them for coming up, and first time we've met with them in years. So it was a great meeting. Appreciate it. And with that, just slightly ahead of time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Hey, man.
Hey, we have our update to the community on the development of the draft 25-26 budget. We've been working on it for a few months, and the board and finance committee have had different meetings and discussions regarding that. We are using a new software system this year. It's Frontline Budget Management Analytics, which helps to create the PowerPoint that you'll see tonight. So we're still working on color scheming. It's not perfected, so bear with me. This first screen shows the projected revenues for next year at 24,179,770. It illustrates what the different sources are. The local share is primarily tax revenue, and there's some other categories that go in there as well. State is our state aid at 15,939,000. Federal is money we get from Medicaid for Medicaid services that we provide to some students and can bill to the federal government. And then there's a category for transfers or other, but we don't have any of those this year. So you'll see this is a 2.6% increase in revenues over this year's adopted budget and a 1.48% increase in revenues as compared to where we projected we'd end the current year when we did the projection at the end of January. Whoops. This slide shows the same information, just in columns. And you'll see that over the years, there isn't a real visible increase in the revenues because we don't see large increases in our revenues from year to year. This slide breaks down the expenses. Our operating expenditures for next year are budgeted at 26,081,787. This shows the different categories of those expenses. Salaries and benefits makes up the largest portion at 68%. Debt service, principal and interest is about 6%. And equipment and contractual supplies makes up about 26%. There's a very small sliver there too for interfund transfers of about 130,000. The proposed budget for next year is a 4.16% increase over this year's budget, and as far as expenditures, and a 7.12% increase over the projected year end that we projected at the end of January for this year. Again, this next slide does the same thing, showing it in column format. And you can see here that there is a more visible increase in the expenses as those are increasing at a faster rate than our revenues. This slide also looks at the expenditures, but rather than breaking it down by the type of expenditure, it breaks it down by the purpose. So all the expenditures related to instruction make up about 49% of the budget, transportation 6%, debt service 7%. So it's just a different way of looking at the categories of expenditures. And this is the column illustration of that. This slide puts together those prior ones. Your revenues are the black column, the expenses are the orange. It reflects what our actual results were for 2024, our current year budget, and our proposed budget. The green line illustrates what happens to our fund balance over the years if fund balance is required to make up that gap between revenues and expenses. And you can see that our fund balance is decreasing across the 3 years. Some key points related to the draft budget. It include the property tax levy assumed a 3.5% increase, which exceeds the calculated cap of 2.08%. The revenues were 24 million, the expenditures were 26, so it requires just over 1.9 million of appropriated fund balance to close the gap between revenues and expenditures. And again, it assumes we are able to complete the capital outlay project that the bid was awarded tonight by June 30th, and so we're on track to do that. And it also includes a 15% increase in health insurance premiums. So those are just some of the key assumptions that are included within the draft budget. To revisit the idea of fund balance, this is a historical chart that we have looked at during the years to show what our fund balance has done in recent years. It takes the fund balance from the prior year and then takes into account any operating surplus or deficit from the year, and then tells you what your ending fund balance was. You can see that here in 21 and 22, we had very large surpluses. Part of that was related to the fact that we had COVID funding to utilize during those years. So some of the expenses that normally would come out of the general fund were paid for out of the federal fund with those COVID stimulus funds. Looking at this year, at the end of January, we were projecting a $501,000 deficit for this year, meaning we'd use that out of fund balance. And then here's the 1.9 million that's required to balance next year's budget. And that would bring our fund balance at the end of the year down to 5.4%. The finance committee in recent years has targeted 6% as the number we didn't really want to go below. So as we move forward in the next couple of months and continue budget development, the board and the finance committee will have to decide if there's additional modifications they want to make to address that. As far as the taxes, this chart shows the calculation of the tax cap. And under that calculation, our tax levy limit for next year is $7,639,404, and that's 2.8%. This chart shows the impact on an average property in the town of Walton that's assessed at $155,000. And when I say the town of Walton, that's where 77% of our properties are. The other towns that have properties within the Walton School District have different equalization rates, so the numbers, precise numbers for those municipalities are going to be a little different. But it shows here, with the 24-25, their taxes were about $2,118. At the calculated tax cap, the 2.08%, their taxes would go up about $44. At the 3.5% that's in the budget, it would go up $74. We put 5% increase in there just to see what that would be as well. It's 105 increase. And if we didn't appropriate fund balance, we were looking to raise taxes to allow the revenues and expenditures to be equal. It would take about a 29% tax increase to not use fund balance, and the tax bill would go up $612. Each year when we work on the budget, we also try to look at a long-range financial plan to say, you know, let's not just look at this year, but what do the next several years look like for the Walton Central School District. The software that I mentioned previously has a module that allows us to do that, and you can put in plan assumptions. The assumptions that I currently have put in that model are a 2% per year tax levy increase, a 3% state aid increase each year, salaries increasing 3.5% to 4%, based on the union contracts that we currently have in place. BOCES services increasing 5% a year, and health insurance increasing 10% a year. You can get a lot more sophisticated with a model than I currently have, as far as assigning different assumptions to different categories, but just as a baseline, these are the ones that I've put in. And I know this is very hard to see. I can share a more detailed one with the board, but basically what it shows is if you have the 26 year, you have a $1.9 million difference between revenues and expenses that year, and it grows to 2.6 million, 3.5, 4.3, and 4.9 using those assumptions. So we've looked at this in the past, and I just I ran it again after putting in the projected numbers for the budget. Next steps related to the budget, as mentioned in the board meeting earlier, the budget survey for the community is open until March 14th. The board is continuing to monitor the projected year-end results for this year to see where we will end and what comfort level they have with appropriating fund balance and any additional adjustments they want to make to the draft budget. Our next scheduled discussion related to the budget is on April 8th for an update. And then the board would need to adopt the budget on the 22nd. We have a public hearing like this on May 6th for the budget, and then the budget vote is on May 20th. Any questions?
The other assumptions we had was we're not cutting anything. That is. The budget itself is like keeping everything, all stuff for students in place. We didn't make any drastic reductions in.
Not at this point. No.
Right. Just want to make sure everybody knew that, you know, we're budgeting for not going backwards. We're budgeting on these expenses were based on, you know, students and all the services we currently have. Good. Thank you, Meg. Anyone have any questions? Okay, good. We can conclude the workshop. Thank you.